What is up? Good to see you. Welcome to our Sixers Talk Trade Deadline Special, a live Q&A coming your way. We have a full house because Ben Simmons has been traded to the Brooklyn Nets for James Harden. We'll get into all the details coming up. I am your host, Danny Pommells. You see Marc Jackson rubbing his hands together, ready to get in on the action. Amy Fadool, my podcast co-host and producer extraordinaire, Ben Berry, joining us. Guys, this is going to be a quick half hour. We have a ton of content coming up. Before we get into all this stuff, I'm going to get quick thoughts from everybody and then get to the Q&A. But I want to remind everyone, we will be on TV at 6 o'clock. Me, Amy, Marc Jackson, Crystal Rich with our trade deadline special on NBC Sports Philadelphia. 24/7 coverage on NBCSportsPhiladelphia.com. But I think the perfect place to start is with a gentleman who has been traded in the NBA, and that would be Marc Jackson. Marc, you jumped right on Twitter, giving your thoughts about what this deal meant. I know you're a little upset that we got rid of Andre Drummond, but give us your thoughts as you heard the trade finally went down.
First, I was like, yes, we're getting something for nothing. Respectfully, meaning Ben Simmons has not played a minute for us this year, so we're getting an all-star, a Hall of Famer for him. That's an upgrade. No disappointed we had to give up my man Andre Drummond. You know, I'm a big fan of the big fellas because y'all trying to make us extinct, and Drummond is by far the best backup big in the league. I was hoping we could have kind of keep him in the fold. But if you want to upgrade, you got to put a ring on it. And we got James Harden. So I guess we got to do what we got to do.
Yeah, it had to happen. And, hey, everybody, chime in with your comments, questions, and thoughts. We will get to those shortly. It had to happen. And, Amy, I've heard you and Marc discuss this ad nauseum. And it's kind of like the Sixers finally bringing this thing to the table at long last. They tried to get James Harden last season for Ben Simmons. It didn't work. And here Daryl Morey is getting his guy. Did they give up too much? Not enough? Like, what's your perspective on the deal?
Yeah, initially it seemed like it was so much. And wow, like it's three players. Well, 2.5. I guess Ben Simmons only half player at this point. As Marc mentioned, he hasn't played a lick this year. And then 2 first-rounders, 2022 and then 2027, which is protected. But no, I mean, you had to give up something. The thing is, the Nets knew that James Harden was going to leave. He had a player option, which is important to note. He already has opted in for next season. So the Sixers guaranteed to have him the rest of this year and next year, which I think is huge. You don't make this deal unless you know you've got him for next year. Now, that is a huge chunk of change. It's $47 million, but you had to get that, in my opinion. If you didn't have that, it would have been way too much. Now I look at it differently. I think, okay, you needed to give them something. It'll be very interesting if you meet this Nets team in the playoffs, but I don't think it was too much. Yes, you're losing some three-point shooting in Seth Curry. James Harden is a three-point shooter. Percentage-wise, not the same, but volume, he's a higher volume, and he makes still 2 threes a game. Seth Curry is a 2-3 a game on average shooter as well. So maybe that's a thing you can look at negligibly. The Andre Drummond does hurt. Now you've got to figure out, where do you pick up a backup big man? You're not going to get anybody on the skill level of Andre Drummond, but maybe you can find a guy that's you're going to get bought out or somewhere, kind of a lesser deal. But as far as like on the buyout market, I thought it was a really good deal. When it came down, it seemed like this was never going to happen. And then all of a sudden, there was a lot more smoke coming out of that fire. And you thought, wow, this actually could go down. I thought it was actually a pretty good deal for the Sixers, given that Harden already opted in.
Hey, Ben, I wanted Patty Mills back. I saw Paul Millsap, and I was okay. I wanted
Paul
Patty
Millsap's
Mills back.
Stop. Come on, Danny.
But the Brooklyn Nets are on a 9-game losing streak. So we got a Joe Sandifer Sr. in the chat saying that the Nets won in this deal. They're on a 9-game losing streak. Harden didn't want to be here. They have probably Kyrie playing in 10 of their remaining games because of the COVID-19 vaccine restrictions in the state of New York. So do you think the Nets won this deal with getting Ben Simmons and get rid of Harden?
No, the winner of this deal was Joel Embiid by far. He's playing at an MVP level. I know our front runner here in Philly for the MVP, probably across the league. Mm-hmm. And the team is within a shot of being in the top seed in the East. You add James Harden to that, a shot creator, someone that can create along the perimeter. This team hasn't had that since Jimmy Butler left. Ben Simmons hasn't played, so he wasn't adding anything to the roster. So Joel Embiid right now is the winner. I know James Harden isn't what he was when he was an MVP or in years past, but he's still a solid player. He's averaging 22 points a game. True shooting percentage is at 57%. I like it. I'm not a big believer in a hamstring injury. I'm not saying it's fake, but I think he'll be 100% come playoff time. The Nets may have gotten a little bit better, but Joel Embiid is the winner of this trade.
Tim Laird chiming in on Facebook saying this is a win now move for Morey. Yeah, definitely a win now move. It's interesting because Doc Rivers kind of has the responsibility of figuring this all out. And to get to Godbolt's question, are the Sixers looking at getting to someone after the buyouts? I think Amy chimed in on that saying, yeah, definitely there's probably a little bit of adjustment that they can make. You had heard maybe Eric Bledsoe might be available, maybe Kemba Walker might be bought out. Maybe there's some other players available who might be more to the Sixers suiting. But what is the starting five going to look like, Mark? I mean, do you like Maxey off the bench? Are you starting Thibault and Green with Harden as like the forwards in the front in the back court, and then Tobias and Joel as the front court, and Maxey with that second unit? What do you see the starting five looking like?
So that's a great question, Danny. For me, I was thinking that starting five with Maxey, James, Matisse Thybulle, Tobias, and Joel is you got the pace and you got the space. You got the guys that can pretty much. So
you like Maxey playing off the ball there? How do you see that?
No, now here's the thing. I like Maxey playing on the ball. Okay. But now I can understand how they might want to adjust and bring Maxey off the bench with that second unit and then putting Matisse and Danny Green in that starting lineup. My question is, though, for more spacing, but my question is this. I think we need Maxey's young legs. I think we need Matisse's young legs with the three of Joel, Tobias, and James Harden. But I understand they might want to put James on the ball. But for me, at James where he's at now, I know he wants to be a point guard. His numbers prove it. He's a great facilitator.
And assist the game.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But for me, I just want some more youth injected into that lineup. But I'm going to hedge my bet. I can understand if they bring Tyrese Maxey off the bench. But let's not even talk about him putting Danny Green in the starting lineup. What about Isaiah Joe?
Interesting.
In the starting lineup.
In the starting lineup at the two-guard spot for spacing, as well as he might have a little bit fresher legs to chase around those two guards.
So the thing is, and we've seen Isaiah Joe knock down some threes. Doc Rivers certainly has been reluctant in the past to play young guys. We saw that. He was forced this year to play Tyrese Maxey because he didn't have a point guard. I think Maxey stays as a starter just because of what he does, as Mark alluded to, what he does give you in that starting lineup. Not only the fresh legs, but the energy, which is one of the reasons why people want him off the bench, because he can come in and give that extra spark. But you can have him play 40 to 41 minutes. And I think you need that because some of the other guys, it's a lot to ask of James Harden to play 40 minutes for another 28 games. That's where we are right now in the season and then the playoffs, if he's going to be running up and down with the ball in his hands. So I think the starting five is Thibault with Maxey, Harris, Harden, and Joel. I think that's probably what it'll look like. That doesn't mean they're not going to tweak it and try some other things, but I think that's the one that gives them the best kind of start out of the gates. And the way that we've seen this team play, they really sometimes have to put the pressure on teams right out of the gates because they have that lull in the third quarter. So if you can build a lead and not let it completely evaporate when you have your all bench unit come in, which is just head scratching at times, I think that gives them the best chance. But no, Danny Green can't be in the starting lineup. He's just too much of a liability right now on the offensive end. It's not to say he's not a useful player, but I think I prefer him coming off the bench. I don't know if he prefers it, but it seems like he seems to do well in that bench role.
Ooh. Amy went one side. I have to go to the other, and I know that the fans aren't going to like this. I have to put Danny Green in the starting lineup.
No way.
Everything else is Maxey, Harden, Tobias, Joel. I have Danny Green as a starting three because if you put Thibault in there, I know he can't shoot. Danny Green.
You know? Come on. Danny Green had like the 0-0-0 and then the retroactive 1 assist recently.
Danny Green has had a lot of 0-0-0s. I know he will at least eventually make a shot. Not Tobias. Matt. Oh wow, Matisse Thybulle. Yes, a lot of names. Matisse Thybulle. Man, I like the kid. I want him to continue to work on his jump shot. I just don't want him to be out there with the starting lineup because defenders, the other team know, we could just sag off him because he's not going to make his shots, no matter how open he becomes.
True. He might knock him down. He did the other day.
Go ahead, Mark. I mean, that's true. I agree with you to a certain extent. But Joel's a rim protector, but you can't have Tobias and James Harden out there chasing. We need some athleticism out there, respectfully. And I think we need some athleticism with some length. And that's why I think Matisse comes into play. We can say Danny, if Danny's a very good player, he's a shooter. But to me, I think his energetic legs are pretty much past him. And I think we need somebody. I think Danny needs to come off the bench 60 to 18 minutes, period. I think if it's not Matisse Thybulle, it got to be Isaiah Joe. And I think James going to have to end up guarding some threes because I just think because of the way the teams play, but we need some length out there. And I think Matisse has to be out there. And he's cut up, So now they have the thing when somebody's double, he dives to the rim. And that's been working out.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people wondering about this backup center position. You talked about the losing Andre Drummond, Mark, and Paul Millsap hasn't played a ton for the Brooklyn Nets. Amy joked before we came on that Paul Millsap and her have probably played the same amount of minutes this season for the Nets. But is this the emergence of the Charles Bassey era? They've been kind of bringing him along. A lot of people, Cree, Vegas Scott in the comments talking about that. We appreciate you guys chiming in. We know Doc loves Charles Bassey, what he does out there, and we've seen him, have great spurts. But is he the guy to fill most of those backup minutes, Mark?
I believe he is. Now, people say, what about big game Paul Reed? I don't think Paul Reed, given his opportunity last year and this year, has taken advantage of his opportunity. But Bassey, on the other hand, gives us a shot blocker as well as a big body that can rebound the ball. And he's young, he's hungry. He would take pleasure in filling that role. I think, to me, big game Paul Reed is going to be a player eventually in the league. He's an undersized 5 trying to turn into that. But I think Bassey is that. And I think he gave us a lot of what Drummond gave us. Not to that level, but close to it.
Yeah, I mean, Drummond actually turned into be a really good passer. He started that in Detroit, and I don't think a lot of people knew that until you saw him in a Sixers uniform. Yep. So he does give you that little extra kind of nuance of being a big man who can really find the open guy, get the rebound, give it an outlet pass, a good outlet pass. Bassey can be that guy. It also could be a guy on the buyout market. Like, we don't know. The chips have not completely settled when you look at this whole day. The trade deadline just ended, 13 minutes ago? So it'll be interesting to see a lot of these moving pieces that have been going around. And there have been some crazy trades today. It's got to be one of the weirder days as far as trade deadline goes. But there could be a guy out there that is ripe for the taking as far as a buyout goes, and the Sixers can pick him up, because that is going to be something. Like, we all know how the rotations go. You guys watch the Sixers games. Joel Embiid takes breaks certain times, and either they have to adjust that or they have to get, as Mark said, Charles Bassey ready, because he's going to have his minutes doubled and sometimes quadrupled when you think about it.
And I'm sorry, Jack, one more thing. I'm sorry. I mean, cut you off. Sorry about that. The other thing about Bassey is we know James Harden flourishes when he has a vertical spacer in the game with him. And respectfully, Joel Embiid, the pick and roll game is there, but Joel's going to pop 80% of the time, more so than dive. But I think Bassey, on the other hand, that's what gets for the James.
So you're looking for the oops. You're looking for the oops.
Charles James flourishes, and that's what Bassey is. That's what he is, a vertical spacer. Yes, sir.
That's where I was going to go with Bassey. I think it's a lot to put on the young players, Bassey and Reed, but we know Doc Rivers plays 20 people a night in the playoffs, which I don't know. I'm not the coach. But Harden plays well with guys that just go up. He can alley-oop the ball too. As Amy said, until we see all the chips fall, who knows who the Sixers can pick up on the buyout market.
Amy, you are a basketball goddess, according to Mike, so take that with you here. A lot of people I see in the comments, Nathan chiming in, are going to miss Seth Curry. He is statistically one of the best, if not the best, three-point shooters in NBA history. But at the same time, you upgrade the shooting guard position by having James Harden. So are people amiss a little bit on the loss and what Seth Curry actually brings as opposed to the level of play that James Harden brings, which is a definite upgrade?
Great point.
A little bit. You look at how many, on average, Seth Curry makes threes a game. 2. How many does James Harden make a game? 2. So it's not as glaring as it looks on paper. Obviously, Seth is a 40% three shooter this year. He's usually higher for his career. Well, we'll go to 43. For his career, James Harden's a 36, which is about league average.
And he's definitely having a down year shooting the three this year.
Yeah, he complained about the ball like everybody else did the first month or so of the season, but the ball has gotten better here in Philadelphia, so that'll help him. And it's more fun he'll have here. So who knows? But I think that initially my reluctance was like, oh, wow, Seth Curry too? That really stinks. But once I looked at it and I thought, okay, well, you are going to miss a guy who can put the ball on the floor. Doc loves guys that can at least handle the ball and do that. But you got one really talented. I mean, you got a former MVP that can do that and then some in James Harden, and a guy that still makes the same number of threes. So, I mean, it's going to be sad in the fact that maybe he was the knockdown 3-point shooter, but you had to give up something. You were never going to get this deal done for free. And they kept Matisse Thybulle, which is obviously a guy that they coveted. And so they had to give up, I think, Seth Curry in this.
Exactly. Good point. I agree with Amy, every bit of that. Like when you pretty much look at what happened, we upgraded our 2 position. That's what we did. We upgraded our 2 position. And I like that. But I'm so when I was seeing everything come in, I was like, please don't give up Maxey. Please don't give up Thybulle. And I see more to come. I was like, I kept hitting refresh. Please say no, Maxey. Please say no, Thybulle. Please. And then I said, yes. Then I said, my buddy sent me, Bank said, but we gave a drum. And I was like, I'll cry today, but I'll be okay tomorrow. So.
No, I didn't want to give up Seth, but it was definitely more important to keep Maxey and Thybulle. And every group chat, every phone call, everyone I've talked to today, it was like, oh, Ben's gone. We got James Harden. That's great. I'm sad to see Seth go, but I'm okay with it.
You're not letting Seth Curry stop you from acquiring James Harden.
Yeah, like if Seth Curry would have stopped at Daryl Morey from making that deal and that news would have got out, he would have been on everyone that hated Ben would have hated him as well now. It was the right move to do. That could not have impeded the trade by any means.
Here's something to keep in mind. So the first thing people say, yeah, we did the trade. Then people like, oh, but we made them better. Oh, it's a bad trade. Like, isn't the goal is to improve our team? Well, we got to worry about us right now. And we upgraded our team. I think we did a very good job. Whatever happens in playoffs, hey, it's 0-0. I like our chance versus anybody. I'm not just saying that to be a homer. I like our chance versus anybody. You see, look at the standings. Look how close it is. I think we have a great chance to get to the finals.
Yeah, look at those standings. Right now, the Nets are in the play-in game, so they might not even make it to
exactly.
I mean, obviously, I think they got better. But the thing is, what Mark, you mentioned it right off the top. It was a 0 in the stat line for Ben Simmons this year. When we're going to see it in our special because I was next to our producer, Brian Brennan. He's going to have a side-by-side of 2021-22 stats from James Harden and from Ben Simmons.
Oh,
and
that
it's
was
going to be a whole, yeah, exactly. A whole lot of zeros all the way down. So, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, I know Ben Simmons is a high-level player, and there's only a couple teams that really he would fit in. And the Nets are one of them because they don't need him to score. They don't need him to shoot. They have all that in Kyrie on the road only right now and in KD when he comes back. But at some point, you had to do something. You were not going to keep a $31 million statistical 0 for your team for 4 more years. That would have been detrimental. And I was definitely in the camp of like, let him sit. And like some point, I'm like, okay, well, now, Amy, you can't be spiteful. Like I wanted to be spiteful a little bit. It can't be spiteful anymore. Like he needs a change of scenery. The Sixers need to get better. This is done. March 10th, I will, you know what? I'll buy everybody dinner on this and maybe on the chat too if he plays that
exactly.
game. There's no way he's playing that game here.
I don't think that would have been
South Philly,
spiteful.
Brooklyn versus Sixers.
There's no way, Danny, right? There's no way he plays that game. But I guarantee there'll be about 1,000 Sixers fans that somehow make it way up to when his first game is in Brooklyn and let him know.
Exactly. Agree.
What were we saying, Ben?
I don't think Amy said it would have been spiteful that if he stayed here and just sat all 4 years.
4 years, spiteful.
Danny knows I kind of wanted to see it just because it's never happened in any
You just wanted to watch the world
I like
burn.
to see unprecedented. Like I want to see a team go undefeated in the NFL for a whole year. I like to see unprecedented things. It would have been
like, how much do you really don't want that money?
Yeah, exactly. That's all. Like that's all. It wouldn't have been. It would have been spiteful, but it was the right move to make. I'm not going to be an upset person and say I wish terrible on him. He's in a better position for him. Yeah. Two guys that love shooting the ball where he doesn't have to do any of that. He can defend is a perfect place for him. But in the long run, who knows how it'll work out.
Yeah, Let's dive into some of these more difficult topics, guys. We got about 10 minutes to go here, and I want to get to the point of some people have the idea that if Ben Simmons had played this season, that Joel wouldn't have been able to erupt and be the MVP candidate he is, because maybe Ben might not have acquiesced as much or set Joel as much as up to play the game that he plays, and Tyrese Maxey wouldn't have the exposure that he has had because Ben would have been here. So with that said, how does this fit with James Harden? Does that take away some of what Maxey has been doing? Because he's definitely been aggressive at times when Joel isn't on the floor and very ball dominant. Does it take away from the ball dominance of Joel Embiid, who's been bringing the ball up the floor, who's been demanding it in the half court? What do you think about how Harden fits in with these guys? And to the point you made, Mark, about Joel's pick and roll game and more of a popper than a roller, how does Harden fit in? And is this a seamless transition?
Well, for me, is it seamless? No, because you got not just a player of James Harden's caliber, but a personality like James Harden. It's going to take time. Everybody can be walking on eggshells first to see how they gel, but they will gel eventually. But without
28 games left, Mark, like Amy mentioned.
Exactly. But I think that's plenty of time. It all is important to see how James Harden hamstring. Is he really hurt? Can he play? We're good. But with that being said, Ben not being here helped us develop Maxey. Ben not being here, playing this year, helped Joel reach the pinnacle of what we're seeing now. Everything, every nuance, bringing the ball up, everything he's doing. And there's no taking that back. I don't care if we had James Harden, LeBron James. There's no taking that back. Joel has shared a new part of his game, and he's not quieting that down for no one. You got to get in when you fit in. Joel's not changing. Now, Maxey, on the other hand, he's been very aggressive, but I think he will still get those opportunities with the second unit as well, whether it's him and Joel or it's him and James with that second unit. He will get those opportunities to be very aggressive. So I don't see him taking a big dip as well.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know that I know that we would not have seen Maxey at this level. Mm-hmm. Numerically, he would not have gotten the minutes. He just couldn't have. That's just not how this would have shaken out. Joel still would have been really good. I mean, we saw that last year, right? He was still an MVP candidate last year. But the nuances that we've discovered in his game, as you mentioned there, Mark, bringing the ball up, his passing ability, which has always been very good, but to the extent that we've gotten to see it, and the real volume of him playing at that level as that point kind of center, we like to call him on post game. I don't know that we would have seen that as much or at all. I think we still would have seen an MVP type of season from Joel because I think he had something to prove, but we would not have seen Maxey really kind of flourish in the way. But Danny, to your question about will he fit in? I mean, we talked about this, Mark, Jim and I on post game the other day. Like, Jimmy, what do you do as a coach when you have new guys come in? They're not a perfect fit. He's like, they're never a perfect fit. It's never a perfect fit. Yep. You could draft an entire team and it's still never going to be a perfect fit, but you make it work, and you make it work the best way that you know how. And he was like, James Harden will work because they will make sure he works in a way that they can work with him and say, listen, this is the way we've been running it. What do you need from us? You know what I mean? I think it has to be a give and take. You can't just come out there and be like, listen, Joel needs the ball X amount of times. His usage rate is 70-something, whatever %. And you fit in where you fit in. No, I mean, James Harden is a high level player. You just traded a bunch of guys and a couple of draft picks to get him. You're going to get his input on that. So I think that, it's a work in progress. The only crummy thing is there's no practice. These guys barely practice anymore. There's just no time for that, the way the schedule is structured. You're having 4 or 5 games, it seems like, in 7 or 8 days. So I'll be interested to see. I think he can fit in better than we think. Again, he fits in better than a guy that's not playing at all. But I think that it's not going to take. Joel's not going to go backwards. I don't know that to be true. Maxey will have to adjust probably the most, in my opinion. But I don't think that Joel's going to go backwards.
And I'm sorry, add one thing. Sorry, when coaches, or not necessarily coaches, when GMs or other people try to say, well, this is how we do this, you got to do this, that just gets players' minds spinning. You just put them out there and say, hey, man, figure it out, period.
Mm-hmm.
It'll work. James Harden will fit in. Practice is very important. I'm not going to go to practice route. It's important, but I saw James Harden skip the Rockets training camp, come in looking 20 pounds overweight, and drop 40 points. I think he'll be fine. I think Joel Embiid will still be Joel Embiid, an MVP level caliber player. Maxey, he'll take a step back, but I think this is a good learning opportunity for him as well. Mm-hmm. The most important thing is in the game situations when Embiid can't get the ball, you need someone to create on the perimeter. The Sixers haven't had that in a couple of years now.
Yes.
Now they
Jimmy
do.
Butler.
That's the big point. That's why I think he'll fit in. Let him sit most of the game. Bring him in the last 5 minutes. He's going to get his own bucket.
Hey, that's James Harden. He can get you 25 in 5 minutes.
Yeah, he sure will.
Are you concerned with the money that
Hey, Danny, you're breaking up on us, so I'll take this one over because we was losing you for a minute for most of that question. What Danny was asking, because James Harden, he just opted back in, and he'll be up for another max contract. And in short, just would you sign him to another max contract? By the time it ends, he'll be around 38 years old. And as Bobby Marks from ESPN predicted, around $62 million that year. He compared it to what Westbrook is right now for LA, or John Wall is for the Houston Rockets. Like, still decent players, just arguably the worst contract in basketball. And he's predicted possibly the worst contract in all of sports ever.
I'll stop you right there because Russell Westbrook is not still a decent player. The Lakers have been trying to give him away for a couple of weeks now, and they had no takers on him. So, I mean, yeah, I hear you. There's no way I max him out at the end of it. I offer him a contract. I offer him a fair contract for a guy that's going to be 38 by the end of it. But you can't offer a guy that's going to be on the wrong side of 35, $62 million a year. That's irresponsible. At some point, you get what you can this year and then all of next year, and then you offer him a fair deal, because if the success is there like you think it's going to be, then this is a pairing that you want to keep together, but not to the expense. I mean, $60-something million is astronomical. Right now, John Wall, the Wizards just gave out bad deals, right? Gilbert Arenas deal was terrible. John Wall deal was terrible. You got why they made it at the time, but John Wall hasn't played a lick of basketball in like 3 years, and he played a little bit last year. $44 million this year. So Russell Westbrook, he's a shell of his former self. He's a liability in the games for them. They can't even play him in the fourth quarter. I don't know that James Harden will get to that level as far as the fall off that we saw from Russell Westbrook. But no, I mean, you can't max him out until he's 38 years old. I mean, Mark, listen, I'd love it if somebody paid me $62 million, but there's just no way, right? You can't do that. That's irresponsible.
Now, Amy, hey guys, this is where it gets tricky, because he said, I'm James Harden, I want the max. So I see part of the deal, he had to opt into a player option for next year.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I'm James Harden, I want that max. You will hope that you would say, okay, James, them last 2 years, you're going to be pretty much up there in age. That 62 does not look like something we might want to invest in, but you may be worth it. But that's a chance we got to take. Then maybe he goes to maybe he goes back and says, you know what, he does a quiet thing. I signed for 2 years. I signed for 2 years, and we revisit that when that time comes. That's what I'm hoping happens, but you never know.
Yeah, that would be ideal.
Would I do it? Probably not. It's not even up for debate or question. I'm not doing it. That's a lot of money. That's a quick way to get fired. But I don't have to make those decisions.
That's true.
Hey, guys, coming here. I hope my microphone is back. You can hear me. Ben Simmons retrospective. Amy, do you want to set that up?
Oh, this is good. Our producer, Brian Brennan, put this together with Ryan Waldoff, our editor. It is a look back on Ben Simmons' career that started off with so much promise, and now his time here in Philadelphia has come to an end. I want you to pay special attention to the Brett Brown quotes that we used early on in his tenure here, in Ben Simmons' tenure, because I think it's very telling. This is a look back at Ben Simmons' time here in Philadelphia, as now he is a Brooklyn Net. A basketball prodigy from Melbourne, Australia, Ben Simmons was a high school phenom at Montverde Academy in Florida. Anointed as a future NBA star before he arrived on LSU's campus for the 2015-2016 season. Sixers fans kept an eye on Baton Rouge to help ease the pain of a 10-72 season, dreaming of pairing Simmons with Joel Embiid as twin pillars of the process. That dream could become reality if the ping pong balls bounced their way in the 2016 NBA Draft Lottery.
The second pick will be made by the Los Angeles Lakers, and that means that the #1 pick in the 2016 NBA Draft goes to the Philadelphia 76ers.
The Sixers had Simmons and other top prospects in for pre-draft workouts, but their choice at #1 was a foregone conclusion when Adam Silver stepped to the mic on draft night.
With the first pick in the 2016 NBA Draft, the Philadelphia 76ers select Ben Simmons from Melbourne, Australia, and Louisiana State University.
I think the city of Philadelphia, the fans are going to be extremely pleased with what they see out of Ben for the next, hopefully the next decade plus. But this is a great starting point for this new evolution, or this stage of evolution of this franchise.
At the time, it seemed like Simmons, rather than Joel Embiid, might emerge as the marketable face of the franchise. Embiid had yet to play an NBA game, and Simmons was already a known commodity in the basketball world.
Yo, Carl, nice gear. Foot Locker?
No doubt.
So any advice now that I've been drafted?
Getting drafted doesn't mean a thing. Now the real work starts. This isn't college. This is a grown man's league. Tell him, Devin.
That's right. Nothing comes easy anymore.
Anything else I should know, D'Angelo?
Got a phone?
Trust me.
His first summer league only heightened the expectations for stardom. Though his jump shot had been non-existent at LSU, he showed immediate improvement and promised to keep working on his only discernible weakness as a player.
How much of a concerted effort did you make tonight to shoot it that way?
Made it a point. I was going to come out and shoot jumpers, and I did that. I think I was stepping out of my comfort zone, but that's how you grow.
Simmons would have to wait to make good on those words. A broken foot during training camp and a subsequent surgery led to Simmons missing the entire 2016-17 season. While Simmons sat, Joel Embiid showed the potential for greatness in his rookie season. Entering the 2017-2018 campaign, the promise of Simmons and Embiid leading a talented young roster gave the Sixers legitimate playoff hopes after 4 straight seasons of losing 50-plus games. Before that season even began, Brett Brown tried to squash the idea that Simmons would need to add a three-point shot to succeed in the NBA.
You all would think, oh, he's got to shoot threes. No, he doesn't. He doesn't have to do that right now. It will come in time. But we all see, I coach Tony Parker, look at, Jay Kidd, look at John Wall, look at Chris Paul. It takes time. And so the mistake that we would all make would be to come in and say, oh, he's got to come in and, really be a three-point shooter next year. No, he doesn't. What's most important for him is his ability to finish and his ability to make a free throw.
Right out of the gates, Simmons proved he could impact winning on the NBA level, jumper or no jumper.
I dare say a confident Ben Simmons from about, 15 feet away. Behind the back, he's got company. Nowitzki back and slamming in the face of the future Hall of Famer is Ben Simmons. Rimmed it. Simmons somehow put it back.
The Sixers won 52 games during the 2017-2018 season, a 24-win improvement over the previous season. Simmons averaged 14 points, 7 rebounds, and 7 assists, and went on to win NBA Rookie of the Year honors. He was dominant in his first playoff series against the Miami Heat, averaging 18 points, 10 boards, and 9 assists. But the glaring hole in his game was exposed in the second-round loss to Boston, when the Celtics' strategy of building a wall in front of Simmons caused him to struggle, including a 1-point performance with 5 turnovers in Game 2.
There's been candid conversation. He understands that his world will become a lot easier once that becomes a part of his game.
I think it just takes time shooting the ball. Obviously, I'm very good at getting to the rim and making plays, so that's what they were trying to stop me from doing, and they did a good job of doing that. But you know, that's one of those things where you just want to improve your game and get better. And then once you start hitting the shots, they change up their defense, so everything has a counter.
Simmons improved in many areas in his second season, lifting his scoring average to almost 16.5 points and leading the NBA with over 2 steals per game on the way to his first All-Star selection. That season also saw a major roster shakeup, with Dario Saric and Robert Covington shipped out and Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris brought in. As Butler took on more of the ball-handling duties in the half-court offense, Simmons' inability to make perimeter shots relegated him to screening and rolling, or setting up in the dunker spot. In the second-round series loss to Toronto, Simmons scored 10 points or fewer 4 times in 7 games, and only attempted 5 shots in the crushing Game 7 loss, leading to more questions about how the lack of a jump shot has hindered his effectiveness.
Are you okay with your point guard not shooting a 15-footer?
I wished he would. Like, if I'm sitting in front of you and he's 26, I think the conversation would probably be a little bit more disingenuous. But I stand by that this isn't going to be the thing that defines him immediately. It will at some point, for sure.
Simmons returned to his on-ball role in the following season as Butler went to Miami in a sign-and-trade deal. And after an offseason filled with videos of Simmons working on his shooting form, he went to training camp with hopes of finally adding a perimeter jump shot to his game.
It just changes the dynamic of the game and the way guys have to guard you. So, you know, once I get into a rhythm and feel comfortable, I think it will change a lot of things.
Actions speak louder than words. And in the 14th game of his 3rd NBA season, Simmons finally showed what everyone had been waiting to see.
Simmons, yes! He did it! Ben Simmons, hold me back there! Maybe now they'll finally leave him alone after that. He hits the three, his first in his NBA career.
2.5 weeks later, Simmons made another 3 in a blowout over Cleveland, leading Brett Brown to issue a challenge to his all-star point guard.
This is what I want, okay? You can pass this along to his agent, his family, and his friends, and to him. I want a 3-point shot a game, minimum. I'm looking at a 23-year-old young man trying to grow his game. It's completely, first, in his wheelhouse, and secondly, he will be liberated. His world will open up, and I think in many ways so will ours.
Instead of heeding his coach's advice, Simmons did the exact opposite, attempting 0 3-point shots for the rest of the season, excluding end-of-the-quarter heaves. A month after laying down the gauntlet to Simmons, Brett Brown had to admit defeat.
Evidently, I have failed, and it's something that we're all mindful of, and this is one of these things that is never going to go away. The attention that this has received is remarkable, but I guess I help fuel it, and you know, I own it. Like, I got to help him, you know, find this, and most importantly, he has to help himself.
As fate would have it, Brown was running out of chances to get through to Simmons, whose season would end after a knee injury in the Orlando bubble. Without Simmons, the Sixers were swept in 4 games by the Celtics, and Brown was fired after 7 seasons. Enter Doc Rivers, who took a different approach to the 4-year saga surrounding Ben Simmons and his jump shot.
I'm not that concerned by it like everyone else is. I really am not. I'm concerned about figuring out the best way to win. This is what I know about Ben. He's an all-star. He's an all-defensive player. In the games that him and Joel have played together, They win 65% of the time. So I don't see a lot of bad there.
Simmons had his best defensive season under Doc Rivers, helping the Sixers get the #1 seed in the East and locking down stars like Damian Lillard and Luka Doncic on his way to a unanimous first-team all-defensive honors. But on the other end of the floor, there were warning signs. Simmons averaged career lows in scoring and assists and shot just 53% from the free throw line after the All-Star break. Both the Wizards and Hawks had such little regard for his free throw shooting that they employed the hack-a-bench strategy in the playoffs. Simmons was unable to make opposing coaches pay for that tactic, shooting just 34% from the free throw line in the playoffs, the worst mark in a single postseason in NBA history. Who knows how much those free throw struggles affected him against Atlanta, but Simmons did not attempt a fourth quarter shot in the final 4 games of that second round loss to the Hawks. Perhaps the enduring image of this series is Simmons passing up a dunk with 3 minutes to go in Game 7, instead passing to Matisse Thybulle, who was fouled, and go 1 for 2 at the free throw line. For Joel Embiid, that moment may have been the last straw in his on-court partnership with Simmons.
I thought the turning point was just, we had an open shot, and we made one free throw, and we missed the other, and then they came down and scored. I ain't shoot well from the line this series. Offensively, I wasn't there. I ain't doing enough for my teammates. There's a lot of things I need to work on.
Doc, you think Ben Simmons can still be a point guard for a championship team like the one you guys want to become?
Yeah, David, I don't know that question or the answer to that right now. So I don't know the answer to that.
The Simmons story morphed into a full-blown soap opera this offseason. Simmons initially requested a trade and refused to report to training camp, only showing up at the team facility to avoid being fined. Doc Rivers kicked Simmons out of practice on October 19th, and Simmons was suspended for conduct detrimental to the team.
I just thought he was a distraction today. I didn't think he wanted to do what everybody else was doing. And it was early, it wasn't a big deal. Just told him he should leave then. Every day, every single moment, I'm going to give Ben a chance to join the team and be part of the team. He's under contract to be part of the team, and so that's not going to change.
2 days after Simmons was kicked out of practice, Sixers president of basketball operations, Daryl Morey, joined the Mike Missinelli show, and he made clear that he would not be bullied into a quick trade by Simmons or anyone else.
The reality is this guy is a multi-time All-Star. This is a very good player. And to give ourselves the best chance to win the title, you need difference makers. You don't need role players. People should buckle in. I mean, this is going to go a long time. If we can trade Ben Simmons for a difference maker, we will do it. I think that's best for everyone in this situation.
Ultimately, Ben Simmons was confounding, a generational talent with potentially a fatal flaw, a 3-time All-Star who was deadly to opponents in the open court and occasionally inhibited his own team in the half court. Will a change of scenery unlock his potential? There are plenty of chapters left to be written. But as Simmons himself said nearly 5 years ago, at the beginning of his NBA journey, he is the one most responsible for charting his own destiny.
Potential, yeah, to one of those words, can go down or up. So there's a lot of potential, but I just got to put in the work and see what happens. Honestly, there's a lot of things that people can say, but if I don't put the work in, it's not going to mean anything.
Ooh. Thank you for listening to this Sixers Talk podcast presented to you by Wilmington University. Wilmu Works. This was a live Q&A. Thank you to Danny Pommells, Amy Fadool, and Marc Jackson. Check out the SNC special trade deadline tonight at 6 p.m. on the My Teams app, as well as NBC Sports Philadelphia. Thanks to Steve Graham and Tom Feiner. I'm Ben Berry. We'll catch you next time.